My name is Alex Mares. I worked at Hueco Tanks State Historic Site for almost 15 years, and I lived on site with my family for 10 years. Was born in El Paso, raised in El Paso, and really the whole Southwest. My father's passed on. My father was Navajo, N.M.S.U. My mother's still alive. My mother's 84 years old, and she was born in El Paso and raised in Old Mexico. On her side of the family, we have Spanish blood and Jicotec. The Mexican people call the Jicotec, they call them by Zapotec. You've probably seen that name or heard that name. You see a lot of their textiles now up here, and they're going back to a lot of the old dyes, the original dyes. The reason I wanted to have a talk tonight, and I asked Dr. P. Don to try to arrange something, was mainly to try to inform and educate people about Hueco tanks that might not know about it or maybe know very little about it, and also to kind of give you a broad history and then kind of give you information on what's going on currently there. Dr. Palmer has come down here and is doing scientific research, and I'll let him explain more about that, but basically it's a mapping of cultural sites, and especially sites that are important to the Kiowa people. Dewey has done a lot of years of research and ethnographic study, sociological study on really almost anything and everything on the Kiowa, but especially, again, places that are relevant and important to the Kiowa and their history, from their migrations to their raids, battles, sacred sites. So I'll let Dewey talk more on that. And Hueco Tanks, is, you can assume or figure out, is one of those places that's important to both of these men and what they're doing. The N.M.S.U are not considered currently by Texas Parks and Wildlife to have a what they call a cultural affiliation. But there is at least one archaeologist, Dr. David Carmichael, who was asked by Texas Parks and Wildlife to be a peer reviewer on the ethnographic study that dealt with Native Americans north of the border in reference to Hueco tanks. And he was very critical of the ethnographic study commissioned by TPWD. And one of the things that he cited, and it would affect the Navajo and others, especially the Navajo and Apache groups and other Pueblo groups, is that he says that really the assessment of who is and isn't culturally affiliated of the peoples north of the border, the method and the scope, the net that was thrown out basically, was too small a net. It should have been a much broader, bigger net. And he pointed out reasons why. And I think as many archaeologists as you might get that might not agree with him, you could get just as many that would. I'm half Navajo. I'm gonna agree from that standpoint, but also because I lived there and worked there and studied about that place and got to meet all the different groups that have or claim to have a stake there, I think I have a pretty good sense of what is and what isn't there. So hopefully in the future, the Navajo Nation and other Apache groups and other Pueblo groups will get another chance to or get a chance, period, because they weren't. They weren't given a chance to respond and give input and have a say. There are between 3 and as much as 6,000 estimated by Texas Parks and Wildlife individual pictographs at Hueco tanks. They have recorded, they've done what they consider to be a complete survey. I don't think anytime soon they're going to do another survey of rock art there, as well as ground level archaeology. What hasn't been done is there hasn't been a complete archaeological survey on the rocks themselves, off of ground level. I can tell you right now firsthand that I know rock art sites there that are not recorded, even as thorough as PPWE has been. So you might think, well, wait a minute, you worked for them. Why didn't you let them know? Why didn't you put that on their plate? Well, for a lot of reasons. The number one reason or method that both the International and the National Rock Art Association deems to be the best protected measure for pictographic petroglyph sites in the world. Guess what that is? Don't let people know about it. And unfortunately, as much good has been done out there by Texas Parks and Wildlife, having worked for them for 15 years and knowing the shortcomings, knowing the lacking, I didn't feel comfortable sharing that information. In 1992, there was damage, specifically graffiti and vandalism to that site. And it was on the level that we, the staff there, really almost demanded from the department that there be an immediate shutdown of the site. And once we were able to provide photographs and imagery of what had been done in a report, luckily the Austin headquarters staff agreed. And by 5 o'clock that day, when we discovered this damage and disrespect to the site, they did exactly that. And it was closed down for 2 weeks to everyone. Native Americans, non-Native Americans, picnickers, campers, climbers, you name it, everybody. To allow Texas Parks and Wildlife to make an assessment and first of all determine the extent of the damage and even begin to just even think, well, what are we going to do? So, because we took a lot of photographs and video, when the public meeting came about, because you're going to have one, we lined the hallway, the corridor leading to the main doors to the auditorium at the high school, auditorium that had seating for 500 people. And a lot of people came up to us and told us after and even before the meeting started, that they had come there already with their minds made up, one way or the other. And quite a few of them, before they even got to the doors of the auditorium and got to sit down in the auditorium, said, walking down that gauntlet, and it was purposeful on our part, walking down that gauntlet of imagery, of photographs of the damage, just seeing that and reading the text, those that thought we were having a knee-jerk reaction and it was overkill and we were violating the public's rights, they got to the door and they had changed their mind. And those that were a little upset and a little irate that the damage had happened, by the time they got to the door, they were really of the mind of something has to be done. So, speed forward 6 years, 1998 comes around, more damage occurs, late 97, early 98. And luckily by this time we had a manager who was very young but very proactive and a go-getter guy, and open to new ideas, open to change.